Okay. Do we have, I think we're still, are we missing a board member?
Don't think we have Ethan.
Okay. I'm seeing 6 o'clock, so I think we'll go ahead and get started regardless. I'd like to call this meeting to order, and I will announce this meeting is being recorded. Jonathan, can you do roll call?
Yep. Director Brandt.
Here.
Director Flaherty.
Here.
Director Freeman.
Here.
Director Aguilar.
Here.
Director Geis. And Director Geis isn't here either. And then Director Deschler.
Here.
Before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge the Chumash people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, Anaskoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. With that, we'll go to the consent agenda. I do see on consent, I think there's 2 bills there that might not have an attachment there. I don't know if that's something that we can correct and approve, or if we want to.
Is it the legal bills? We don't.
Yeah, that's right.
Attaching those anymore. We sent an email about why back in November, but we can clarify. But that's privileged information.
That's right. I'm remembering now. All right. So is there a motion on the consent agenda?
I move to support the consent agenda.
All right. Motion by Deschler. Is there a second?
I would second an approval of the consent agenda if that's, but I'm not certain if is support sufficient.
Did I say that wrong?
We'll mark it down as approval.
Approve is good.
Any comment from the board? Any public comment on the consent agenda? All right, let's go to a roll call vote.
Great. Director Brandt.
Yes.
Freeman.
Yes.
Geis. Oh, he's absent. Flaherty.
Yes.
Aguilar.
Yes.
Deschler.
Yes.
Bertrand.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Now we're going to move to public comment. This is the time for any member of the public to speak specifically on matters that are not on the agenda today. We will not take action on any item that's not on the agenda except as provided for by law. Do we have any requests to speak on items not on the agenda? All right, I see a hand from Mark. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. Hi, board. I sent an email to Jonathan about this, but just want to say it to make sure that it wasn't missed, that some of y'all's lovely faces, the new ones on the board, are not yet on the IVCSD website. And I would love to see that up to date so that y'all can be represented there. That's it for me. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for that, Mark. Any other comments? All right, I see a hand from Ash. Go ahead, Ash.
I was just waving. I'm at work, so I actually won't be talking.
No worries. Oh, great to see you. Any other comments from members of the public on items that are not on the agenda? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment. And with that, we're going to go to the first item, which is report from partners on response to COVID-19 health order violations.
Great, thank you. We're appreciative of all our partners who are here with us today to present on their efforts on COVID-19 response to violations. We have one presenter, UCSB, will be coming at the end towards 6:30. But we've got everyone else here already, which is Santa Barbara City College, County of Santa Barbara, and our law enforcement agencies. And so we asked everybody to do, a short presentation of about, 5 minutes each, and then, we're going to have our Q&A from folks after that. So I would want to turn it over to Kelly Hubbard, to hopefully lead us off, and then we'll maybe go to our law enforcement, then City College, and then UCSB at the end. Would that work?
That's fine, Jonathan, not a problem. Did you want an actual presentation with a PowerPoint or just some formal remarks?
Yes, I can let you share your screen.
Okay.
Okay, you're good to go now.
And so hopefully you can see that all right. And I apologize, it brings me into different screens. So just give me a moment to adjust my screen here. Okay, so I was asked to just give a brief update on what the county is doing for education and enforcement. And this is a slightly abbreviated presentation of which the board will get an updated one. The County Board of Supervisors will receive in a few weeks here. Just to provide an overview, the county has our county complaint form up on our website. Unfortunately, providing a direct link is not the easiest. So if you go to the recoverysbc.org, reopen your business, it's down at the bottom of the page for anyone who wanted to see that.
I'm sorry, would it cause you a horrible UI problem if you were to play the presentation? It'll use up like twice as much screen area if you do that.
Let me try. I have done that previously on Zoom and it has not worked very well. So let's see. And this is why. Let me do it this way. Give me a moment.
It might be under display settings in the upper left-hand corner, and then you probably turn off the presenter view.
Yeah, I was, it's because I have dual screen.
But it's not there.
So yeah, just give me a second here. Pause. I just have to switch which screen I'm sharing. Okay, does that work? Are you seeing it full screen now? I think I saw a nodded yes.
I'm still seeing the dual presenter screen, if that's.
Just give me a moment. It's part of. Here we go. Where'd you guys go to? Sorry, my mouse is now. Okay, let's try this one more time. Okay, you are seeing the screen at the moment, right?
That's right.
Okay, and then let me go back. Now it should let me do it appropriately. Oops, it should let me do it appropriately if I hit the right button. There we go. Now can you see
That
it?
is
Correct. Perfect.
Thank you so much for taking the time to do that.
No problem. I apologize. It's with two screens, it tends to flip around on me, and so it's been a problem in the past. Okay. So county complaint form, our website, again, it's at the bottom of that page. It is actually in a couple different areas of the website, but this is probably the easiest one to find. So between when we started that form at the end of August and the end of this January, we've received approximately 1,500 complaints. These complaints range in the types of complaints. I do want to point out that some of these can be duplicative, meaning that multiple people could be complaining about the same business or the same party at different times, different perspectives. We have some people who like to complain about the exact same thing daily and provide complaints every day until they see it corrected, regardless of our ability to correct some of these concepts. So I wanted to share that. The other thing I want to point out is if there is a need, and Juan, I'm sure we'll touch on this a little bit later, but if there's a need for immediate response to gatherings, the complaint form is not an immediate notification concept. So complaints received through the complaint form are processed the next business day. So if it's over the weekend, that may not be seen until the next Monday. And then we go into them and we look at them and make sure that an appropriate agency is seeing them and responding to them. So it is not an immediate call out or notification to agencies who have responsibility or jurisdiction. The other thing I want to point out is that we are receiving complaints related to the whole entire geographic area of the county. And that means that we receive complaints that are within another jurisdiction's area of legal responsibility or authority. And so the county, so the graph to the right here shows approximately how many are being referred out to other jurisdictions who have appropriate authority or jurisdiction for that complaint. Pointing out that often that includes our cities, county environmental health services, and then the sheriff's office. And again, that goes to the type of complaint and where that complaint may be based in terms of address or area of responsibility. To that point, when we follow up on these complaints, I mentioned that when we follow up on complaints, it is the next business day. What I want to point out about that is that complaints referred to a responsible agency. So once we get into our sheet, the complaints go into an Excel sheet, a smart sheet, and we assign them out. The complaints then have to be substantiated by a government official. And so if we refer them to, for instance, EHS, our environmental health services, EHS then has to go out and actually see that violation. They cannot provide enforcement based on a community members or a complaint that's received via the complaint form. It has to be substantiated by an official. Then we provide the education and corrective action. Second complaint, again, we were trying, especially initially in this incident and this pandemic, to do education first before enforcement. We largely feel that education has been out there and it's kind of time to move into enforcement. But if there's truly someone that's receiving a complaint that we haven't talked to before, we do still try to do that education first. Then we get that second complaint, and again, has to be substantiated by an official. So next day or the next week we go out, we have to actually see that violation to be able to take enforcement action. And this will come into discussion as well when I'm sure Juan speaks in a few minutes here. That being said, this is the various enforcement actions possible. I think your group is probably most interested in the large party and gathering component of this versus the businesses, but I can cover both quickly. The large party and gatherings attendees, as well as the host, can be issued an administrative fine or a criminal violation. It's important to note that in this case, administrative fines for large party and gatherings, we would be leaning as a county on our sheriff's office. And if it's criminal violation, it's both the sheriff's office and the DA that get involved in that. And again, Juan can speak to that a little bit more. Additionally, we are looking at and exploring our concepts of landlord, property manager, what can be done there. I don't think administrative fines really applies to our landlord property manager, but we're looking at what kinds of concepts can apply. Businesses, and I apologize, I'm actually noticing I'm speaking from the slide, and I want to point out, sorry, that some of my check marks when I did an update are out of place. So administrative fine and criminal violation do not apply to landlord property manager. I'm like, wait a second, I apologize. We are exploring our civil complaint injunction concepts related to landlord and property manager. So please note that is a mistake in that slide when I did some updates. So I apologize. Related to businesses, many of these enforcement actions can apply. So there are a few businesses within the community here. And for instance, not following protective measures, opening or operating when not allowed at all, or operating outside of restrictions, for instance, operating inside when they are only allowed to operate outside. These various violations can apply. For your audience and for the board here, in terms of administrative fine, the way the county administrative order is written is that the first violation is $100, the second violation is $200, and then the third or any consecutive violation after would be $500 each. Gatherings is a big discussion, and our Joint Information Center most recently had graphics related to Super Bowl Sunday. So I know it's a little after the fact, but that was the graphic we still have available. So the key point on gatherings is, yes, now there is the concept of 3 households or less, but the most important component of that is that the health officer order does still require for those gatherings to be outside for social distancing and for masks to still be worn. And so even if there are gatherings, we do still are expecting those additional concepts of physical distancing, masks. And then also just for protection purposes and recommendations, it is truly recommended that those gatherings are kept to a very limited time. That is not a restriction of the health officer order per se, but it really does play a role in the likelihood and the transmission of the virus. And then I won't speak to this slide as much, but I will, Juan, if you want me to leave this up, I can, or I can go to questions and we can move it over to Juan, the lieutenant.
Thank you, Kelly. It's up to you if you want to keep going or take questions now.
Why don't we let the lieutenant speak, and then we can take questions for the county as a whole, maybe?
That'll work for me. Hi, everybody. This is Juan Camarena, Lieutenant with the Sheriff's Office, IV Foot Patrol Station Commander. In the event that I lose connection, Community Resource Deputy Justin Shorter's on the line, and he will take over in the event that I lose connection. Well, first, I want to start with the enforcement aspect. There's two types of enforcement approach. We have the initiated deputy / officer initiated type call, and the citizen initiated call for service. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can
Hello?
hear you. Yes.
Oh, okay. The self-initiated calls for service is usually you have a deputy or an officer working the foot patrol. They're patrolling on foot on Del Playa, for example, and they see a large gathering. And the gathering, we usually use a rule of thumb of about 30 to 40 people, let's say, in front of a residence. And we'll go and make contact with that resident or the residents of the property, and we'll make a determination if they're in violation of the public health order. If they're in violation, we have two options, education and issuing a citation. The citation that we're issuing is administrative, is a public health order administrative citation. If the decision of the officer or deputy to issue that citation, the host will get a citation for violating the health order, and other members of the residence. On the citizen initiated call, the deputy or the officer will respond to the request, and once they get to the address, they will determine if the residents are in violation of the health order. If they are in violation, a administrative citation will be issued. If they're not in violation, whether it's citizen initiated or self-initiated, we're gonna take that time or that opportunity to continue educating the residents on the public health order. Can you guys still hear me?
You're going a little in and out, but generally hearing you. You might be gone now.
I think we were able to get the majority of what you had to say, Lieutenant Camarena. If he's not available, though, no worries. I think that was a good summary, and I'll open it up to the board if the board has any questions for Lieutenant Camarena or Ms. Hubbard. Director Freeman.
Thank you. So one question I have is in the presentation from the county, as well as kind of implied in the presentation from the lieutenant, there are some complaints which are being directed through the sheriff's office and some complaints which are being handled by the county. Is there, can I get a better qualitative feel for the difference in a complaint that would lead it to being referred to the sheriff's office?
Sure. So from the Office of Emergency Management is one of my staff members who is doing the referrals essentially once we receive them. And it's easiest if I actually go the other way, provide some examples of who else it goes to, and then back into the sheriff, how it gets referred to the sheriff. So if it is a restaurant, bar, any concept of an operation that is within the regulatory authority of the Environmental Health Services. So restaurants, bars, vitamin shops, nuances on pools. There's some general areas that in various kind of nuances there. Those would get referred to Environmental Health Services regardless of what city that restaurant is in. So Environmental Health Services regulations come from the state, and so they have authority over the entire county, not just unincorporated. Now, if it falls any other type of business that falls within a incorporated city, that's when it gets referred to the city. And then when it's unincorporated area and it does not fall within Environmental Health Services, then we do a variety of approaches where whether it's that maybe staff of mine try to reach out to, for instance, an organization that's associated. Example would be some of the complaints we've had about sports. So we wouldn't refer that necessarily to the sheriff's office. We would try to reach out, staff would reach out to those organizational groups trying to maintain or get compliance with that. But pretty much after that, most other complaints will get referred over to the sheriff to at least do that initial outreach and education, and then determination if there's additional assistance or groups that can provide enforcement.
Thank you for that.
It's a pretty wide, it's a pretty wide potential grouping, but that's where it's at the moment.
Thank you for that explanation. I guess when I had been paying attention to the process as was going through the County Board of Supervisors and the various meetings that had led up to the decision to have this kind of staff-led approach at the Board of Supervisors, in addition to then the meetings we've had since then, I feel like I'm not alone in the community of having felt that more of this would be handled by staff as opposed to the sheriff's office, particularly with respect to, oh yeah?
Go ahead, sorry.
Particularly with respect, I mean, even just like residences where it seemed like it wasn't going to be a terrible issue or something. So you were going to explain.
Yeah, so we did through the administrative fine process bring in some additional county staff who have authorities to work on administrative fines. For example, our park rangers, our agricultural commissioner, investigators and enforcement officers that they have. But these are groups and individuals who are not trained in engagement with residential community groups in the day-to-day duties of their responsibilities. And so when we talk about going into a residence or going to a residence and responding to a party or a gathering, that's where we start to run into some issues or concerns about having the appropriate level of expertise, training, background on how to handle, mitigate, and respond to those instances, just in case they do become a concept of conflict. And even with the park rangers, we've been working on how to assist them when they are working in the parks and doing approaching various groups about enforcement. And so that's where some of the residential response has still maintained and stayed with the sheriff's office.
Yeah, I guess then from my perspective, I mean, had I understood where this was going to end up, or like the amount of leniency that was going to be allowed, I would not have been all in support of what the county ended up going ahead with the various enforcement processes in order to make certain that this was more strictly defined as to what we were actually talking about and who would go out and do enforcement. And that actually, I guess, also then covers the question I had, because during various meetings we've had about this in the community recently, questions have occurred about how if the staff response only occurs during office hours, how do they expect people to respond to parties? Aren't they just going to send the sheriff? Apparently, you're just sending the sheriff anyway. I guess my next question then that's still relevant. Actually, I'm going to reorder them and ask this one first. Did I hear the sheriff? Did I hear the lieutenant say 30 to 40 deputies, or was it 30 to 40 residents? Were you saying that you were going to have 30 to 40 deputies outside of the residents, or was it that
residents, 30 to 40 residents?
All right, good. Thank you. All right, great. I'm great. In the county slide, there was discussion of 7 criminal violations and then number of administration citations. I don't know if it's all possible. I'm not asking for specific instances, but I'm curious what is the qualitative description you might be able to provide on average of like what tends to lead something to become a criminal violation of the health ordinances as opposed to merely an administrative citation.
Juan, would you like to address that?
I don't know if Juan made it back on. If not, this is Deputy Sheriff. Juan, are you there?
Yeah, go ahead.
So I think, Jay, you're asking what the difference is between the county ordinance violation, which is the criminal citation, and then the administrative citation, which is the new process and the new form we're using. One goes down to the district attorney, and one is a straight fine. And so there's not really necessarily a difference. It's just kind of a parallel system.
I meant like when you're doing the interaction, what will cause you to decide this is going to be a criminal violation and I will send it to the DA, yada, yada, or this is going to be the administrative citation? Like what?
So I guess it just it's how egregious the violation is. So are we talking about 150 people who are absolutely refusing to cooperate and disperse the party? That's probably more likely to be a criminal violation. And then there are maybe a party with 25 people from 6 different households, which is still a violation, but they are cooperative, and we may go the administrative route on them. So it depends on the severity of the violation, I guess, to answer your question.
Thank you so much. Next question I have, I think it was, it sounded like that the administrative fines applied to all the people at the event, not merely to the one person who's running the event. Is that correct?
They can.
It is applicable, but we generally don't cite every single person there. We just don't have the manpower, but technically everybody that's there would be in violation of that section.
Okay. I only thought about that from the perspective. I mean, I've been in the party where it's like, oh, this party's been fined. Let's contribute money towards the party in order to help the fines. And so if you have a fine that applies to an entire party and it's $100 fine, that might actually be almost a meaningless fine, even for people who don't have much money. So, and then in the county presentation, who is considered to be a government official with respect to the checks? You said you had to have a government
verification.
official.
Yeah, verification. Yeah, it just has to be one of our assigned enforcement officers or sheriff. So the sheriff's office or one of the departments or groups that I indicated, park ranger, E8 environmental health services, our ag inspector commissioner group. So it can't be based solely on the complaint received through the complaint form. So we would have to send out a county representative to verify the violation, and then enforcement could take place from there.
Thank you. And then my last question on is, so you said that there is you require a second complaint for the things that you end up handling in order to go through with your process. That second complaint is something that has to come back from the public. I mostly to provide.
So let me clarify, Jay.
Oh,
yeah.
Sure.
So we don't require a second complaint. It's that initially our focus was on education and outreach. So initially at the beginning of COVID, many people had confusion about what the restrictions were, what was allowed or not allowed, especially our businesses. And so our goal and our initial efforts were education and outreach. Now, and so through that, we could, again, going back similar to what Juan mentioned earlier, the lieutenant mentioned earlier, is if it's egregious, we could move forward to that enforcement stance immediately. Especially if we felt that the individual was or the business was not responsive to education and outreach, then we can move directly into that enforcement stance. But again, trying to have the focus on education and outreach, and if someone truly is not understanding of what the restrictions are, then we want to make sure we inform them.
Do you do education and outreach on the first complaint or only on the second complaint?
Both. So again, on the first complaint and the second, education and outreach, again, enforcement can occur at any time. But again, trying to focus on education and outreach if we think that's an effective method.
That's mostly what I wanted to check. The context I was just wanting to bring to it was that I've often heard complaints from members of the public who, not like complaints about complaints, members of the public, where they'll bring forward a complaint about something and then they'll feel like, oh, well, the county's on this. They're checking into it. They send somebody out there to do education, and then the issue is ongoing. And if they felt like, well, either they rapidly convert into the kind of person that we all end up being frustrated by, who call every single day in order to say every single complaint that they have, because they feel that that's the only way they're going to get her actual. The county doesn't do anything unless you keep complaining over and over again. Or they feel that the county doesn't do anything. It's like, well, I already complained about this. And then they come to every public meeting that's not the county and they say, I told the county about this. And then the county's like, well, they had to give a second formal complaint. And so I feel like there's always like some balance between there of, the county gets a complaint, and then I'll let you check up again a week later to see yourself, and without having to require somebody from the public to see if, for example, that business is still operating the way that it was.
Yeah. So the other consideration also is that when we go out to validate that complaint, even on the first one, is that we're not always seeing what the person is complaining about. So that's something to recognize, is when we go out to validate the complaint, it could be that at the time that our staff happen to go out, that violation is not occurring. Not to say that it wasn't when the person issued the complaint, but when we go back out, it may not be occurring. And so we cannot provide enforcement on the concept of just the complainant itself. We have to have that confirmation. And so that might be the other reason that may occur as well. And then additionally, as I mentioned, you mentioned why would we not go out and do check-ins again on our own without receiving complaints again? And there are cases, more than a few, where various agencies are trying to do that, but there is limitation to staffing ability.
Thank you so very much. Those are all of my questions.
Sure.
And back to the people.
Thank you for the questions, Director Freeman. Any other questions of Ms. Hubbard or Lieutenant Camarena from our board? Director Deschler.
Hi, thank you both for your presentation. I wanted to ask Kelly, on the chart that you had, the pie chart, is there a breakdown there, or if I missed it, of Isla Vista complaints, or does that exist somewhere else?
No, it was not on that chart. I can look into if that is something that we can do.
Yeah,
but
mainly I was just curious.
And actually, I would have to think about that. Since Isla Vista is not an agency that we assign responsibility to per se, we would have to look for another method to sort the data. But if that is of interest, it's something we can look into.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Director Flaherty.
Hi, I just had a clarifying question on the landlords. I was just wondering if the formal process was decided or if you are still exploring the different avenues, and when would people be aware of that process?
Sure. I apologize about that mistake in the PowerPoint. I didn't notice until I was halfway through it. So with the landlords, currently, there are a couple processes that are already occurring. So there is outreach that is occurring to the landlords, where when we have complaints related to properties, The lieutenant as well as others are working with those landlords to make sure they're aware of the issues and asking for their assistance in achieving compliance. And so many times we are receiving cooperation with those groups, and that has been really our best method, right, is reaching out to them and having them be a partner in this effort. And then there's just a few instances where we've started to explore whether or not there's additional actions we can take when we have continued issues at a property. But really, we have largely seen the landlords cooperate and work with us. We're looking at doing a town hall with the landlords to help explain additional issues, considerations for them, and what additional outreach or support we can provide. That helps. And I don't know if the lieutenant has anything to add to that.
Yes, we work closely with the landlords. If there is a specific house that has been having large gatherings, or even we have received numerous complaints, and even though when we get there, there's no violations of the health order, we reach out to the landlords and they help us with the education and the outreach, and they've been very supportive of this efforts.
Thank you for that, Lieutenant Camarena and Ms. Hubbard. I see a follow-up hand from Director Friedman.
I just want to clarify something. I was replaying everything I said back in my head. I want to clarify that when I said that I had been in parties with the fines, it was not related to COVID. It was related to noise ordinance issues many, many years ago. I'm actually one of the people who barely leaves my apartment in relation to COVID. But I was just like, wait, are they thinking that I'm actually out there when people partying? And I'm like, I don't need. So yeah.
Thanks for that clarification. I'm sure we were all very confused. So I have one question, and I think it's for Lieutenant Camarena. So for members of the public, and I want folks to be really clear about this, members of the public that wish to report a large gathering that is currently in progress with the hope that there will be some remedy taken in order to stop that gathering from happening potentially, what is their best bet? Is it to call 911? Is it to call non-emergency dispatch? Is it to report on one of these forms?
The best thing to do, if it's just a large gathering and it's not really a major crime, i.e. like a fight or somebody got hurt, if it's something that serious, 911 will be the best approach or the best decision. And if it's just a large gathering, they could call our non-emergency number, and that number is 805-692-5743.
And as a follow-up to that, is there I know that 911, you can text 911. Can you text the non-emergency line as well?
No, you can't. It goes directly to our call taker, which is right in the dispatch center.
All right. Thank you for that clarification, Lieutenant. If there are no other questions, oh, I do see a hand from Director Aguilar. Go ahead.
Hi. Thank you, Lieutenant Camarena, for that description. I just have one quick follow-up. So what is some of the language that someone, especially a resident in Isla Vista, would use when they're on the phone, on the non-emergency phone line? Just, it can be kind of confusing. So just like, what kind of language should they use to describe the party? Like, there is a large gathering that is in violation of the public health order, or should they say something else more specific? That's the only thing, just because the students here have like their own very different opinions. And if they call a noise violation and then you go and it's not that loud, or that's not the real issue, that can lead to a big mess. So just, I want to know if there's like a specific phrasing of this violation.
No, just they're calling to report a large gathering and they believe they're violating the health order. That will be sufficient for a dispatcher to go ahead and initiate a call and deliver that call to the deputy or officer who's on foot or patrolling the area. But it's just a large gathering, believe that they're in violation of the health order. And it's very hard for the caller to really determine if they're violating or not, but calling will activate the deputy or the officer who's working, and they're going to go and investigate further and determine if there is a violation or not.
Awesome, thank you.
Are there any other questions from board members? All right, I'm not seeing any hands. So with that, I think we'll go on to our next partner. And I'm seeing Ms. Luz Reyes Martin from Santa Barbara City College.
Hi, thank you. And I have a brief PowerPoint. Let me see if I can. All right, can you see that?
Yes, we can.
Yes, okay, great. I also have dual screens, so sometimes it's a little tricky, but Google Slides seems to never fail me so far. It's wonderful to see you all this evening. My name is Luz Reyes Martin. I am the Executive Director of Public Affairs and Communications at Santa Barbara City College. And I just have a couple of slides and I'm happy to take questions. First and foremost, Santa Barbara City College, like our other educational institutions in town, has been completely immersed, like I'm sure you have, with responding to COVID-19 since just about a year ago, as we get close to March. So for our main campus, which, as you know, is on the Mesa, we have developed, a whole response plan, not only for our students, but also for employees. A lot of this information is available on our website and has been periodically shared with all of our students over the course of the last year. Quite a lot of our outreach to students, similar to what the county shared, has been on education. So throughout, we have been both developing our own educational materials and also sharing great information coming from the county public health department across our social media channels, on our website, directly via email to students, and also sharing it with student groups and student leaders so that they can also be ambassadors for COVID responsible behavior and healthy practices. I will share with this group that when the free COVID-19 walk-up testing started in Isla Vista, we had a tremendous response from our students. They were so appreciative that was there. I know many of them have taken advantage of that. I regularly get calls and emails from students on the weekend asking, oh, where was that again? Where do I need to go? So we're always happy to help them get connected to that whenever they would like to do that. So, just a quick status of Santa Barbara City College for those that are not familiar. We have been in remote learning since last spring. So our spring semester, roughly by about mid to late March, shifted to completely remote. Our summer sessions were remote, our fall semester, and currently our spring semester is planned to be fully remote as well. We have some very limited exceptions to that. We have some specialized programs that are permitted to meet in person, such as our nursing program and other critical infrastructure type of programs. We also started offering physical education classes outdoors, which are very popular on our La Playa field, so that we know that it's really important for students and our young people to have opportunities to go out safely, socialize with classmates, and take a spin class or other types of physical education classes. So those have been very positively received, and we have very strict COVID protocols to make sure everyone is safe with those activities. So related to COVID-19 complaints, and in particular in Isla Vista, all of our campus community members, this includes students, staff who live in the community, they're encouraged to use our SBCC report a concern form. And it's something that is pretty widely known among students. And it's something we regularly push out more information about this form. They can use that for COVID-19 related complaints. We also make them aware of other options in Isla Vista, like what was mentioned, the non-emergency number. We really try to continue to push the information on education about what's allowed and what is not with the health officer order. So our associate dean for student life is charged with following up on these complaints. We have gotten complaints periodically. It hasn't been very many. It's on the order of a couple dozen. And what happens is the associate dean places dean's hold on the student's account. And that student is required to speak with them or meet with them via Zoom to talk about, the complaint that was received. It's an educational opportunity. The associate dean goes over what the public health officer order, states, goes over, COVID safety and, the importance of being a responsible community member. And that goes for students living in Isla Vista and, anywhere else in our community. So, that is typically how we have been responding to complaints. We're limited in the extent of a consequence that we can have for students as a community college. It is very different than maybe a university or other type of college. But we are heavily continuing to push the education. And when we do receive complaints, I will say through the report of concern or through any other outreach that is done where someone comes and tells us about, students that they know live at X address who are having a party, contact will still be made in that case too. So it's not solely based on a formal complaint that comes in through the form. And that conversation happens with the student about what was shared and why it's important to maybe make different choices about activity that's happening in Isla Vista or anywhere else in the community. I think that's all I've got. So I'll stop sharing and happy to take questions.
Thank you, Luz. Are there any questions from board members? I see a hand from Director Bertrand.
Hi, good evening, Luz. Nice to see you. I think I'm the only former Vaquero on this board, so glad to see City College at the meeting tonight. And I have a question on the housing side of the COVID-19 experience for your students right now. I know City College has, within the Office of Student Life, housing assistance for students, helping them find housing and coaching them through the practice and helping them out when they need some guidance. And I'm wondering if you're hearing students having an increased issue with housing insecurity right now as a result of the pandemic, or if you're hearing students reaching out with safety concerns about their living situation at this time.
That's a great question. Thank you so much. And yes, we are very proud of Ethan being one of our alums. I would say that food insecurity continues to be one of the top concerns for students, as well as support needed in mental health and social emotional health. We have seen a real huge increase in demand for wellness and mental health support for students. On the housing issue in particular, One of the biggest questions related to housing that we've heard from students was really around wanting to know how long we anticipated we would be operating remotely. We're on a semester system, so it's a schedule, so it's a real big chunk of time. So students really wanted to know, if there was an opportunity perhaps for them to go home or go back to, or really anywhere that they'd like to be for the duration of that semester. And that's one of the reasons why, our superintendent president made that decision for this spring semester to just really early on go ahead and say, we're going to plan to be remote for the whole semester. I know that at that time we had quite a lot of students who then made choices about housing. I know that I continue to hear about how the high cost of living here is absolutely an issue that has been amplified as a result of COVID-19. Many of our students are essential workers and work in our various businesses in town that may either be closed or be operating on reduced staffing. So that has certainly affected our students.
Got it. Thank you for that information.
Are there any other questions from board members? All right, I'm not seeing any other hands. So with that, thank you, Luz, for the update. And next, I'd like to invite Margaret Clune from UCSB.
Hello, everyone. Glad to be here tonight. And I want to thank Lieutenant Camarena and Spencer for accompanying me on our walk around on Saturday night. It was really good to be out and around in Isla Vista and see what things looked like. And also to check in with our community service officers who were at their tents that they're at Friday and Saturday night, handing out masks and providing assistance to students who need it. And so that I want to give just a brief context in terms of what we've been doing since the beginning of this, in terms of the fact that we are in regular communication with our students. Every time there's a change in the health order or something that needs to be updated, we're communicating with our students. Our health and wellness, alcohol, drug program, and our university communication office are regularly putting out educational campaigns and making sure that students have information. And so that's going on all the time. Also, Associated Students, the beloved community, some of the messages that are out, Together at Heart, 6 Feet Apart, those kinds of campaigns from Associated Students, mask distribution, thermometers and things that we've been doing, those have been supported by Associated Students. So I want to acknowledge their efforts. And also the campus made a decision with our testing centers that we would extend our testing to all of our students. As the students know, we've got really quick turnaround now on testing results, and we can test about over 15 or 1,600 individuals a day at our testing sites on campus, and results can be same day if you come in the morning before noon. So those were all sort of our context. More specifically to the things that you want to hear about tonight, we started back in August encouraging UCSB students to report violations of public health orders and concerns that they were seeing in Isla Vista. And since we began getting those reports, we have followed up on each and every one. So if there's an address and we don't have names, then a letter is delivered to the address. And then we track whether there's a repeat report. In the cases where we have a repeat report, then we can escalate to a next phase of contact or potentially referral to student conduct. And also, as Luz and Kelly referenced, we're sharing information every week so that if there is a landlord who can be notified, if there's a problem at an address, we'll make sure that follow-up happens. And when we get individual names of UCSB students, then there's a dean contact. And again, there's a warning, but then if there are repeat offenses, then we can refer things to student conduct. Actually, with the letters being delivered and the dean's contacts, there have been very few repeats on those. Unfortunately, there are a lot of residences and a lot of students in Isla Vista, but we are seeing that intervention has made a difference. So we're tracking that pretty carefully. We have put some individuals and some organizations through our student conduct system. And so that's kind of what and then we're coordinating with our partners, the county and Santa Barbara City College, in terms of making sure that we're all sort of trying to work together. And actually, I don't know if Kelly gave the update that we have a letter to send out to the residents of Isla Vista about the sort of coordinated effort between those entities. We will also be letting our students know that we are encouraging them not to travel for spring break, and then providing information if they do not follow state and Santa Barbara County and university guidance and do travel, what will be required in terms of testing and quarantine and those aspects. One thing I wanted to make sure this group knows about is that we are planning, actually students are getting training right now to start an ambassador project in Isla Vista, so that some of our health and wellness peers will be in Isla Vista near the food co-op, and we'll be distributing COVID kits with masks, thermometers, hand sanitizer. They will also be answering questions and providing resource information. And we hope we're going to start with that one station, and then we hope with training that we'll wind up with a couple of hundred students who will be ambassadors in Isla Vista, and then we can think about expanding our efforts. But we realize we want to have an in-person, on the ground presence out there. To talk about where we're headed, our operations will be pretty similar to the spring with where we are now for winter, although we're hoping that a few other on-campus resources might be open, such as the library and the rec center. We're working that out, but hoping that those might be open for the spring quarter. And our basic needs resources have been open throughout, going back to, they never shut down. So we have also tried to make sure that students know what's available: laptops, hotspots, and food and housing insecurity resources. So I think those are the basics that I wanted to cover, and then I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions from board members? Director Flaherty.
Hi, thank you for presenting. I have a question about, you mentioned the library and the rec center possibly opening, and that there weren't complete concrete plans right now. But I'm just curious, would there be like time slots that students sign up for in order to be able to go there?
Yeah,
I know a lot of people would love to study there and not in their apartment.
We know that. We're hearing that loudly and clearly. And just to be very specific, the rec center and the library have both developed extensive plans so that they are ready as soon as it's safe to get to do so and they get the go-ahead. But they have plans. Yes, you would be, for the library and for the rec center, you would be signing up for appointments, and so it would be reduced capacity. Actually, rec center would be offering all outdoor activities, but library would be reduced capacity indoors. Right now, it's only graduate students and teaching assistants, but it would be open for some study space. We hope. We're waiting for a decision. But the planning, we've done the planning.
And then I have a follow-up to that. When would the decision be made? Would it be like county or state like rules that you would have to listen to, or is it more like the university?
It's a combination of following the lead and guidance from the county and then university, making sure that we're following all the planning and regulation that we need to. I don't know if Kirsten, do you want to add anything to that? Would you say that differently?
I think that's exactly right.
Thank you for that. Are there any other questions from board members? All right, well, seeing none, I will just share that it was a pleasure to walk around with Margaret and with Lieutenant Camarena this past weekend. I've made it kind of a point this year to try and walk around at least one weekend night every weekend so far this year. And I have to say that this past weekend was the first where I started to feel a little bit encouraged about the trend. I think it's a little too early to say, really, but I think we benefited this past weekend from maybe a little bit of midterms going on and taking up people's time. And I certainly did not see the volume of large gatherings that I have seen in the past. So it's encouraging. I hope it continues. And I'm also encouraged by the COVID case numbers countywide and the COVID case numbers in Isla Vista, both of which were reported today to be decreasing. It does not mean that now is the time to let our guard down. I think to the contrary, we all need to be extra vigilant to make sure that these trends continue. But I really appreciate our partners being able to gather here today and give us a little bit of an understanding of what enforcement actions and accountability measures are in place for those that continue to violate the health officer order at this time. I see a hand from Director Bertrand.
Thank you. And just to follow up on that, I really feel that knowledge is power in this space. There's so much different information for our community members to keep track of. So it's imperative that we continue to simplify it as much as possible. I think in the past few weeks, there was a lot of confusion when the governor announced the end of the regional stay-at-home order, which was obviously great news for our local businesses to start to reopen. But we also had to remind folks that there are still many precautions in place. So while we are moving forward with reopening, it's really a gradual movement so that we can make sure we don't have to go back to taking those extra precautions with cases so high. So let's continue to all work together to communicate these important messages.
Thank you, Director Bertrand. Are there any other directors who wish to speak? All right, well, thank you again for our partners for being here and presenting today. And we hope that we can all continue to stay safe and healthy together as a community.
Thank you.
And I realize I haven't gone to public comments, so I do want to open up public comment at this time. If any members of the public wish to speak on COVID-19 health officer order violations. I see a hand, I believe, from, oh, I saw it. We'll go to Rodney Gould and then to be followed by Mark.
Hi. Kelly, I just wondering if you had any Isla Vista specific numbers. I know you have it broken down by large parties and different types of violations, but I was wondering if you had Isla Vista specific numbers.
And I think if your question's for Kelly Hubbard, I'm not seeing her on the call right now.
Okay.
Hey, Spencer, this is Juan Camarena. What I could do, I could provide Rodney some rough numbers, estimates. I don't have them in front of me, but I could send him an email to him with some numbers from last week and the weekend before.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you for that. All right, Mark, go ahead.
Hi, Spencer, thank you. So I kind of have three comments, I guess, questions. So one is regarding a comment that Deputy Schroeder made versus like a party or basically a citation being a fine versus going to the district attorney. And it sounded like I just didn't know if there's a clear standard there or if it was an ad hoc judgment by an officer. I was wondering if there was a clear standard, if that could be just like made public or if there's a document that could be shared publicly. Second thing is I also think it was for Ms. Hubbard, but it seems like the only way that things kind of go through or happen is if there's evidence of ill behavior upon a second like attempt. And I'm wondering if there's any value to any like proof of ill behavior with photos or videos or written statements in a submission of a submission to the county. And then the last one is to Margaret. Good to see you again. Which is that I recognize as a fellow student that the privacy of other students need to be accounted for. But I know that you mentioned organizations, and I haven't heard any specific organizations. Probably my guess is like clubs and fraternities mentioned, and I'm wondering if those can be named explicitly, because I think both the Isla Vista community and students especially would like that accountability.
So I've neglected to mention that we started a dashboard so that we could report the follow-up that we're doing. And so I want to check with student conduct in terms of mentioning specific organizations. I understand your question and we'll follow up and find out what the practice is with that or what we can share. I understand why you're asking.
Thank you for those comments, Mark. And I do see, just as a follow-up, I think Kirsten mentioned in the chat that it sounds like the Office of Emergency Management is going to need to generate the numbers for Isla Vista because they don't currently have their reports formatted that way. But if we do receive that follow-up, I'm happy to forward that along to you, Rodney. Any other comments from members of the public? All right, I'm not seeing any hands, so we'll close public comment. And I just want to say again to our presenters, thank you for being here and helping to explain the process that we have in place.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Spencer.
Next on the agenda, we have a report on the Pallet Temporary Shelter Project. And joining us, we have patiently waiting Sylvia Bernard and Kirsten Cahoon from the Good Samaritan Foundation. Go ahead, Sylvia.
Hi, so my name is Sylvia Bernard. I'm the Executive Director of Good Samaritan Shelter, and I'm just going to give a quick presentation on the Isla Vista pallet shelters that we have popped up as a pop-up shelter. So we opened up the shelter in partnership with the IVRPD, the IVCSD, because we're utilizing the building that they were occupying, and the County of Santa Barbara. And it was in response to, actually COVID response, to the growing encampments that have been growing in Isla Vista, specifically in the parks. So we worked in partnership. We replied to a NOFA, worked with the county, who's been very supportive, and the community, and we went ahead and opened that in the beginning of December. The pop-up shelter, it consists of 20 pallet shelters. There are 8x8 units. Each unit has a heater. It has an electrical plug for their phones and devices. It also each one has a light, and it has a fire alarm as well. So those, or smoke alarm. So those are all set up from a company out of Seattle or Washington area. And then they came down and brought those in, and then we are operating that. So the concept is that each pallet can actually hold 2 people, only if they came from the same household due to COVID restrictions. So, so you can only have 2 people in there if they came from the same tent, for example. So currently we are full. We have all 20 pallet shelters are full. We're serving 26 clients currently. We've served, we opened in the beginning of December, and we've actually served a total of 39 clients to date. We've had some successes already. We had 4 that have already reached out for treatment and gone to the sobering center or outpatient or entered into detox. We have 3 on medicated assisted treatment. 4 were able to successfully get surgeries that they were unable to in a safe way while they were living in encampments and in the park. Those individuals are medically fragile. Two are working and employed. They got jobs, and so that's really great news for them as they go on their journey of independence. Three have received Medi-Cal benefits in the process. So we partner with many agencies, but Department of Social Services has been really helpful in coming and helping us help people with their documents and get benefits. So 3 have received Medi-Cal benefits, 5 have received CalFresh benefits, 3 are actively involved in mental health benefits and services. Department of Behavioral Wellness through the county comes and does outreach on a regular basis. 3 are working with the public defender's office to clear up their criminal charges, and the public defender's advocates come out on a regular basis and do outreach. And 100% of them have completed the VI SPDAT, which is the vulnerability index, and are in the HMIS system, which means that they can then access resources such as housing from here. We partner with a number of organizations that we both brought in and have existing partnerships with. So that includes behavioral wellness, as I mentioned, the public defender's office. Public health comes on a regular basis. They have an outreach nurse that comes, and Doctors Without Walls just started coming back out to Isla Vista to our pallet shelters as well. And then social services. Home for Good also is assisting in providing some meals that they have in partnership with UCSB. So that's been really helpful for lunchtime, Monday through Friday. And so that's kind of an update on where we're at. Our plan is our contract is only through June. So we hope to be able to successfully transition the residents that we're working with back into the community, into housing, out of homelessness, into programs. And then the plan is to pack up the pallet shelters and take them out of the community and have the community services community center go back to what it was. And so that is the plan that we have in working with the county. I just want to really put a big shout out to the County of Santa Barbara for not only funding the project, but also all of the supportive services that they've provided, in addition to general services, has been incredibly helpful in setting it up in a very short period of time. From thought to implementation, it was literally 4 weeks. And so it was a very quick project and a great way to respond, especially in the middle of a pandemic. So that's all the presentation I have. Unless anyone has any questions, I'm open to questions.
Thank you, Sylvia. And I want to open it up for questions from the board. But first, I really just want to acknowledge all the amazing work that you and your team are putting in on a daily basis, serving this underserved population. The statistics that you just listed off very quickly, I might add, are astounding. I think in a great way to see the success that you're having in such a short time period of only a little over a month that the temporary shelter has been open. And I know our community is thankful for you, for the work that you all are doing with our houseless neighbors.
Thank you so much. And I have to say the community has been really open and welcoming, and we've had individuals drop off donations and we've had a lot of the different students be involved and put together hygiene kits and drop off blankets. UCSB staff put together some donations when we first opened and donated robes and slippers, and we're working with the laundromat across the street to be able to help our residents do laundry. Just really grateful for the welcome that we've gotten.
Are there any questions from board members? All right, I'm not seeing any hands. Oh, I see one from Director Deschler.
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just also wanted to just really appreciate Good Sam and the county and all the partners that have come together on this project. I was involved in the working group for just a wee bit, and it was just so unbelievable to see that when people really put their heads together and there's something really important to do, that bureaucratic hurdles can be overcome and obstacles overcome. And so I just really wanted to shout out to all the folks that have been involved in this, because it just like you said, Spencer, it is really impressive to hear some of the successes that you've had in such a relatively short time. And I think I always love when Isla Vista is doing things that then can be modeled around the rest of the community. And this is certainly that project. So I just really wanted to say thank you to all of you.
Thank you so much.
Are there any other board member questions or comments? All right, I'll open it up for public comment. Any comments from members of the public on the temporary pallet shelter project? All right, I'm not seeing any. And so I'll bring it back to the board, and I see a hand from Director Bertrand.
Yes, thank you. I'll speak as a neighbor of the project. I can see it from my front yard, and it just brings me and my neighbors so much peace of mind, knowing that our neighbors who were previously unhoused, many of them do now have roof over their head, especially during this time when the weather is getting wetter and colder. And from a safety perspective too, there were a lot of safety concerns with what the encampments looked like before this project opened. And while there are still certainly some safety concerns, overall it seems a lot safer. So thank you so much to everyone who's been involved. Sylvia, thank you so much. And I'm grateful to hear that it's been a warm welcome from community members.
Thank you, Ethan.
Are there any other board member comments or questions? All right, then with that, we'll close this item. Thank you, Ms. Bernard, for the update. And thank you for all the work that you're doing for our community.
Thank you.
All right, next we're gonna move to item 4.3, which is Isla Vista planning.
Great. This is a follow-up discussion from our last meeting on January 27th, and we didn't have an opportunity to have a full discussion or to take action. So this is the follow-up now.
Excellent. I just want to thank everyone who was able to join us for the hearing with the County Planning and Development staff. I thought that it was very informative. I certainly learned a lot about the Isla Vista Master Plan and just the planning process. And I also think that a lot of us learned the depth, or at least got an appreciation for what we don't know, which is that all of the intricacies of the planning process were somewhat displayed to us in and of the fact that I think many community members had a lot of questions, and a lot of good questions about things that they didn't necessarily understand. So I think there's a huge opportunity there for our community to become more educated in the process. But we did want to have this discussion just as a follow-up, and also wanted to acknowledge we had a good conversation at our board retreat as well about some of the steps that could be taken in regards to the sustainable transportation plan or the circulation plan that is going to be developed through the ATP, or the STEP grant process, which is going to be commencing later this year. Jonathan, can you give a brief overview of what that's going to look like?
Yeah, the STEP grant is it starts on July 1st is when the funds become available to use. And it's about a 2-year process, maximum of 3 years, but we've planned it for 2 to do extensive, very extensive community outreach and pop-ups and experiments to gather data on what a community mobility plan for Isla Vista would be like. And it's based on sustainability and equity, which is in the name. And that's the end product of the STEP grant, is a community mobility plan. And it's based on a lot of community outreach and working with community organizations to hire them to do outreach in their own communities. So that's something that's going to be coming up in the next year.
Excellent. Well, I know we'll all be really excited for that. And I also want to leave it open to board members to discuss this, which has been brought up in the past, this idea that for any planning process to commence, it'll be important that we as a district can show that we're invested in that process. And one of the ideas that has been brought up is to solicit the help of the consultants that originally helped draft the master plan in some role related to performing workshops and education for the community about the process, about the basics on planning. And I want to bring it to the board and solicit folks' feedback for something like that. I see a hand from Director Deshler.
Spencer, I think that is a great idea. I know that was talked about at the meeting that we had at the county planning. I think it would be really important to get kind of a lay person's overview of the IV master plan so to the community, so that people can really understand the process. What is a master plan? What it, just some of the fundamentals, because it's not just transportation, right? It's a lot of different components. And I think hearing from the folks that did do planning this before and did the outreach and developed the plan would be great. And I think so bringing in maybe some people who were involved several years ago, so not just the company that was hired, but also maybe some folks from UCSB who were involved in that as well. It just might be helpful to get that perspective. So I think it's a great idea and a good first start. So I'm supportive.
Thank you for that. I think it's a great idea. Broaden the process, not just the whatever the firm was, but also those others. I know Bob and I have spoken before about some former staff members that he was connected with and worked with at the time that made a lot of contributions to that project. Is there any other feedback from board members? Bob, go ahead, and then Ethan.
Yeah. So I was distracted doing trying to buy my daughter a house. So, anyways, I'm back on point on this issue. I'm particularly interested. Number one, if you look at the last master plan, one thing we had was a lot of money because of redevelopment, and in spite of having all that money, there were a lot of things in the plan that the county was going to pursue, knowing they had the clout of the redevelopment agency tax increment to help them accomplish a lot of things in that plan. There's a lot of things in there when you read it to go, the county's going to do this and the county's going to do that. And then when there was no, revenue source again, it probably would have made it difficult to for the county without spending a lot of general fund money to get that plan done. A general plan is about, and you can see that in Goleta and even the Goleta community plan, it's about development. It's about the private sector developing properties within the areas. It took the Goleta plan. You see a lot of infill projects happening in the unincorporated area of Goleta because they did a Goleta plan update there. The same thing with the city of Goleta. I bet it took them probably 5 years through a couple of iterations of boards to really get a change in their general plan. And then it really it created a lot of development and a lot of new units, maybe I'm hearing as much as 8,000 new residents in the sphere of influence around the city of Goleta. So, it's a big deal to do a community plan update. And as the county already says, they won't even be able to get started for a couple of years. And so I'm kind of worried that how do we the IV Community Service District, how do we get that momentum going and get it and make sure that over a period of time we get something done? And here's my thought process in that. I'm wondering if a municipal services agency, we could get the county to say, well, that's kind of the agency that's gonna, that could be not only the municipal services agency, but it could be the PAC, the Planning Area Commission, that helps, you know, bring the community input into a Goleta community plan. And I can tell you, I went through where we had a PAC and a GPAC, which were the same in Isla Vista. And those were very, I don't know, we had a lot of people on that board to make sure we got the community input. And that planning process really struggled because it couldn't get any momentum together to come to making the plan work. And eventually we kind of slimmed that down with all these experts and stuff that we hired to get a plan, you know, put together. But I guess my disappointment is after all that time, after all that effort, it didn't get done. And so I'm going, well, what process could we use so that that process doesn't stop? And I don't know what that is working with the county. I didn't see a good, it's like Jay said the other day, oh, I guess we're going to fund that whole planning effort. And I'm going, I don't think so. I don't think we can afford that whole planning effort. It has to be, you know, the county's a part of the beneficiary of redeveloping or, you know, having more development in Goleta. They get the property tax increment off that. We're not getting that. And so I don't know. I was just trying to think of a way that we could use our powers to help that process along. And I'm thinking, especially from the community effort, we're really good. You guys are really good about getting the input of the community. And I'm just trying to think of how we could play a role in that to get the good input to the community and get a PAC or a GPAC going and helping the county out with that community input. It's long-winded, but I was trying to think about how could that work better, because it's the Isla Vista community is really eclectic. It's just like some people don't want it in their backyard. Some people want stuff in their backyard. Some people want the change. You know, it was really controversial. Like, you know, when we put the palm trees on Part All, it was really controversial when we, you know, let the 5 developments that happened go in there. People liked it and some people didn't, because, you know, I'm from the point that Isla Vista is quaint. Isla Vista is cool, you know, the way it is. And so I don't know how to get this thing rolling and keep it rolling. Because I know it died in 2016 and 5 years later, there's been no planning. So I don't know if other board members have any thoughts about that.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, that's definitely a lot to chew on. I think I saw a hand from Ethan. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So the first point I was going to bring up is I also think that under our general interest in planning, we should check back in with UCSB to learn more about the status of the Ocean Road development, if that's still moving along on time, and what that might look like, because that will certainly impact the density of our community and could really activate a big part of our community too in ways that are different from what it looks like right now, while also fulfilling a lot of the housing need that we have for workforce. So definitely want to learn more about that as we're considering general planning issues. And then I hear the comments from Director Geis about how do we be most strategic with connecting the community to these conversations. And I definitely think that's our imperative right now. As I mentioned during the retreat, My kind of focus right now is what can we do with the grant that's right in front of us on the mobility study side, and really take advantage of that project and do it well and learn and pivot from that. When we come to the end, does it make more sense for us to be in a position to really launch our parking district, or do we want to take a more active role in creating a master plan, or both? But I definitely am of the opinion right now that we really should focus as much as possible in this next year on doing a good job on the strategic transportation equity plan.
And I can come that way, Ethan. I kind of agree, and I think that is, if that's a strategy, I think we should make that, make sure that's part of our long-term plan and make it clear to the county. Here's what we're focused on for the next couple of years before they're able to even get a plan, funding for this kickoff of another master plan in Isla Vista.
Mm-hmm. I think there was another comment from Director Deschler.
Yes, thank you again. So I'll preface this by saying planning absolutely befuddles me, the whole concept. And I said this before, I'll say it again, because I just have to think I'm not the only person that is completely confused by the planning process and the elements and everything else. And so when Bob was talking, I was thinking, what can galvanize people to care about an IV master plan? And I definitely agree with Ethan. When you talked about the STEP plan, the STEP grant, that's something that is going to be, there's going to be a lot of outreach, a lot of engagement, and on something that people in Isla Vista really care about. And I think that's going to be a perfect kind of segue into what planning means and how it can be transformational. I wonder though, I feel like there has to be a middle ground between hearing from the county, which we did, and then hearing from the company that was involved in the IV master plan. I feel like we need a little bit more education, a little bit more information. And I'm wondering, I'm going to throw something out here, but I wonder if it's worth us, I'm going to say the dreaded word, hiring or contracting with someone who can provide us with some analysis for us, for our board, of what was the master plan, what was the key takeaways, what's still viable, what's not, and how give us advice on how to move forward, because none of us are planners, and this is like hardcore planning stuff. So I feel like we need a bit of expertise, and there are some good local planning folks in town that might be able to provide us that advice and analysis. So I throw that out there. I see Jay, he's got his brow wrinkled. That's it for me.
Thank you for that, Director Deschler. It's a very interesting idea. And I see another hand from Bob. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to agree with Kirsten. When I was auditor of the county, I was into the finance mode. And when it got to planning and development, I ran duck and hid, because that is the most controversial area of the county in my lifetime, because we went through lots of things in my 40 years being here of no growth policies, growth policies. We controlled growth by, controlling water boards. We controlled growth in many different ways. And there still is that feeling among us. We don't want to, have this high rate of growth and become Orange County and Santa Barbara County. It's just not there. We still like the avocado orchards, and we like the lemon orchards. And so, that's what makes us, this great community. So I just agree with Kristen. I think we need to get much more educated on what a community plan really does for a community.
Thanks, Bob. Director Freeman.
So I thought that was a fascinating thought process when Kirsten brought it up of bringing somebody in order to, because it is the case that planning is an incredibly complicated thing, and there's so much work that had gone into that master plan, the extent to which in 2015, when I was digging through all of it, I mean, I only scratched the surface of it, and I was spending a lot of time on it. And so being able to actually get that kind of description for us, if we go down that path, does seem very important. That said, what Bob had said earlier in his, not just now, but in his previous comments, really, I think, it really resonated with me about this idea that, like, the reason that master plan had been done the way that it was, the fact that existing and everything, was tied to the redevelopment agency, which is tied to the goal of providing drawing development to the area to increase the property values in order to then provide the money in order to do the further development, and the whole thing, the whole plan the state had with those redevelopment agencies in the first place, and so I kind of like had thought of those things. But then when Bob mentioned that when you do all of that development, particularly now without that redevelopment agency, who's the beneficiary of it? It's the county with all the property taxes that come in. It just really underscored for me this idea that if we're kind of taking point on doing all of this work, and by not like paying the time and effort to do it, like as people, volunteers, but actually as an organization paying for staff to do it, paying for external consultants to do it, it just doesn't seem like it's really our job with the money that we have. It almost feels as if the county is just punting a problem to us, as opposed to us organically deciding that this is the thing that we should be doing. And then I think back to, so we have this power, right, which is the Area Planning Commission power. And I think back to when we were discussing that in the AB3 times, what we were trying to get out of that. And it's, we wanted to have influence in planning. We wanted decisions in planning to come before a group of people in Isla Vista as a body that could provide decision-making influence on it, not necessarily, though, to take on all of the staff work that went into it. A question had often come up in the community, well, who will pay for all of that time and effort? It's like, well, the county planning already said has to pay for all of that time and effort anyway, because it's technically the county area. It's just that we would be paying for the operation of the meeting. We would be paying for the staff support to take the minutes. We would be paying for any potentially extra copies of staff reports that we were dealing with. But we didn't want to have to pay for the planning process, to bring in the consultants to do all of the planning work. And there I have to ask the question, which I don't know if any of us here in the call know the answer to, but like, does Montecito, and there's the whole story which I won't go into right now of why Montecito succeeded in getting that planning commission, but does Montecito pay for all of that work, or is the county doing all of it and then just bringing Montecito in order to make the decision on what to like essentially provide there's like not advice, but a non-binding comment to the county in order to make all their decisions. I'm just concerned that we're kind of thinking about this right now as this process where it's like we're going to start trying to take over the planning process, when that's not really what I think our tax money is going to be, was really designed to be allocated for, not really what an area planning commission does even, and not really something that will end up benefiting the community back. But that's my rambling on this now.
Thank you for that, Jay. And I can understand your thoughts on that, but I do want to, I think, maybe right size expectations just for members of the public, because I'm always cognizant of over promising or over setting expectations too high. I don't see this as us talking right now about taking over the planning process for Isla Vista. That would be way too big of a bite for us to chew off, and would be, as you imply, incredibly expensive, and probably would not even be legal because it'd be supplanting the services that the county already provides. What I guess my thinking about this is, and my goal in this, is to be able to provide community members with the tools, armed with the knowledge and understanding of some of these concepts, to be able to participate in the planning process in a productive way. And thereby also, for not just for community members, but for our board, to get a better understanding of the implications of what had been proposed in the past with the Isla Vista Master Plan in a way that we are able to digest. Because I'm very cognizant of Kirsten and Bob's comments about how confusing planning can be. And I appreciate that. I think I have to check myself a little bit because I'm the son of a city planner. And so from the time that I was a little kid, I would come home and my dad would have the latest and greatest subdivision map that I could roll out and color on, or just I don't know, use it as part of whatever toys I was playing with at the time. And so that's not to say I know everything about planning. I certainly don't. But I do think that there's something to be said for how intricate some of these conflicts are. And I feel from the community that there is a strong desire to participate in ways that we can try and affect things like transportation, things like development, towards the goals of becoming more sustainable and becoming, as some have suggested, carbon neutral in Isla Vista. And I think just again, to bring it back, I think what I see as a strength in doing something like what's being proposed is that we would arm community members with the knowledge and the tools to productively participate in a process like that. And I realize I cut in line in front of Kirsten, so I'll go back over to you.
I absolutely love that you are the son of a planner. It makes so much sense now that you're more familiar with some of these things. I'm the daughter of an architect, so I don't know what that means. But what I was going to say to Jay is, well, let me just go back. So part of my background, and I mentioned this earlier, is that I worked at the city of Goleta. And I worked with at the city of Goleta when we were creating the general plan. And so I was part of all those hundreds and hundreds of community meetings. But what was ultimately about the general plan in Goleta, and what I think is at the root of an IV plan in IV, is for residents to be able to determine their destiny, what they want their community to look like. That is what the master plan is all about. It's about saying, this is what we value and this is what we want to have in our community. And for Goleta, it was, they didn't want the county to be determining, you know, their planning, their housing, their transportation. For us, I think it's for us. For Isla Vista, I think it's the same thing. It's about creating the destiny that you want for yourself. And so that's why I think the master plan or a plan is important. So I just go back to Jay, that I think ultimately it's about the will of the people, what they want their community to look like. And that's why a plan is so important. So that was my little message.
Thank you for that, Kirsten. And I know we as a board have talked a lot about this. Maybe it would be helpful to take public comment if there is any. I see a hand from Rodney and then to be followed by Mark. Go ahead, Rodney.
Hi, can you hear me? I'm not sure. Yeah? Yes. Okay, cool. I just want to say that, you know, the master plan, in some, I mean, I agree with most everything that's been talked about by the board. You know, I agree that, you know, the master plan is about what community wants to see in their community. And I agree that there was a lot, it was very controversial, the master plan when it was happening. And, you know, the buildings like the Icon and the Loop that were built and put in, you know, they were put in with very little parking, but there was supposed to be, you know, a trade-off done with that, which never happened because at the end of, because of the, you know, the dissolution of the redevelopment plan. And so we're kind of stuck with these Orange County looking buildings in IV, which really, in my mind, don't really fit the community at all. But obviously some people, you know, do. One thing I wanted to talk about or just mention is, you know, the density that's already here in Isla Vista. The master plan was largely hinged on putting more density in Isla Vista. And do we really want that? Does the community really want that? The master plan is extremely outdated. There was going to be a trade for the Park District property where the district offices are now for the community building, community center, and they were going to change the Anascoyo Pond. They're going to put underground parking at the end of the loop with the big amphitheater. They were going to lose the old amphitheater. Estero Park was supposed to be the home of a brand new community center with senior services and all kinds of different things, which has now been, that is all encumbered by 25 years because of a grant that was given by the state to build the soccer field. I mean, there's just so much that's outdated on that plan. And it almost feels like, you want to do a parking thing. I think that's great, but I don't know that it should be done within the confines of the really old master plan that is so far out of date. I mean, it feels to me like you should take the components that you want to do and just work on those components, as the IVCSD, in collaboration with other community organizations, instead of trying to rework a plan that is so outdated and not funded, and just doesn't really make any sense anymore. That's my 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Rodney. I'm going to go to Mark to be followed by Ash.
Hi again, everyone. So a couple of disparate things. So I think the first one is that, I guess just a really small note that the UCSB has a circulation committee set up by the chancellor last year with hired consultants for them. And so I honestly don't know the status of that committee. I don't even have a lot of hope in that committee, but it would be a shame if we made a plan, Isla Vista made a plan to have a bike path on one street and then UCSB made a bike path on another street, and there was no communication between those entities. So I think specifically those partners, the circulation planning partners, and are going to be really critical at UCSB beyond just having an affiliation with the university. The second thing I'll say is I'm from Orange County, and I don't like Orange County, so I'm going to say that really upfront. But I kind of hear Orange County used as this kind of insult of what we don't want Santa Barbara to be. And what I'll say about Orange County planning is bad planning. It's bad planning because it doesn't center community, and it also centers car culture, which I think we're trying to get away from in Isla Vista. And I think as long as we're not centering those things, you're not going to have Orange County. I can assure you that, at least as a resident, that if you kind of center community priorities, you're not going to have this stale, vapid place that I'm happy to be away from. So yeah, I just want to say that I don't think we're on a slippery slope to being Newport Coast. The last thing I'll say is I think most of the board members here know I come to damn near every one of these CSD meetings if I can, at least since I got back to Santa Barbara. And I don't understand what's going on in terms of this process whatsoever. And I think that's what you guys are saying too. But I want to be really clear that I need an infographic that we are here. And then by the time we develop a master plan, we end up here. And what are the steps in the middle? Because that is also going to help someone like myself, and especially someone like Ash, who's on my left here, at least on my screen, to get people in the community involved in this process. But it's so opaque right now and so vague to me that I don't know how to get my friends, the people that I know that are interested in planning, and the people that are interested in this community involved in this process. Because I don't know what the next step is. I just come to these meetings because I'm happy to be here and happy to comment. But anyways, yeah, that's it for me. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for those comments, Mark. All right, next, go ahead, Ash.
Cool. So I think I should be real with y'all. That the meeting on the master plan was really boring. I think even those of us that like to learn about government had a hard time paying attention. So yeah, I think Isla Vista, actually has the opportunity to bring some excitement around this, and bring in groups like Eco Vista and others that care about our future, and doing things in a way that's making our community more sustainable and more equitable and things like that. So yeah, that's why a lot of folks from EcoVista are interested is how can we bring in people to make it more grassroots and a diversity of perspectives and I guess some people, everybody has a different idea of what it even means. For some people, they think it means like, developing more icons, which a lot of us aren't hoping that's not what it is. But I think it's an opportunity to, research what, what we can do in the 21st century to make things better for the environment and better for people and more inclusive and stuff like that. So that's why I'm here, and I hope that we can keep moving in that direction and pick some things to work on. Maybe it doesn't have to be making a whole plan. Maybe it can be just picking a few things to work on. But I think the county is going to be thinking about this anyway. Joan Hartman keeps mentioning like we need to work on housing and we need to work on like all these things, and I'm looking forward to hearing more from her about what that really means. I think Isla Vista Community Network and some other things in the community would be interested in facilitating community feedback as well. Thanks.
Thank you for those comments, Ash. Are there any other members of the public that wish to speak? All right, I'm not seeing anyone, so I'll close public comment and bring it back to the board. And I see Ethan, go ahead.
Thank you. One more thing I'll mention in terms of the Sustainable Transportation Grant Planning process is I just remembered that SBCAG, the Santa Barbara County Association of Governments, is kind of going through a similar community outreach process right now as part of creating their 2050 Regional Transportation Plan and Community Sustainability Strategy, where what they're doing and what's relevant to this is they are partnering and contracting with Community Environmental Council, CEC, Just Communities, and at one point they were also working with CAUSE, Central Coast Alliance United for a Sustainable Economy, to do a community-based planning process related to transportation. And they're doing that obviously on a much larger county-wide scale, but it may be helpful for Jonathan and staff and stakeholders to meet with the team that's working on that over at the transportation side of SBCAG, just to learn more about what's been working with them in their community process, and perhaps there's some opportunities for collaboration there on our process as well.
Thanks for that, Ethan. I see a hand from Marcos. Go ahead.
Yes. So I quickly want to say thank you to Mark for your comments. I had similar descriptions of an infographic and some kind of flowing chart in my notes, but I was just kind of like doubting myself as a director, like, does that even make sense here? But then that idea of like, does that make sense here? And what makes sense here was kind of compounded by Ash's comments, which are, how do we make sure that we don't have boundaries to understanding this plan? And I think that's a big hurdle for community engagement. It's not necessarily who wants to participate, it's who wants to participate but doesn't understand or feels excluded or feels like this information is above their head, or maybe that they shouldn't be commenting, or the whole different varieties of imposter syndrome that occur. So in a community full of young persons that are aspiring to become college educated and tons of other families in which English is possibly a second language, I think we need to make sure that we keep as minimal or no boundaries whenever we have these conversations. So I would be fully in support in spending some kind of time or energy or possibly funds. I don't know about funds, but like if we do hire some kind of planning group in the future or a business, that they make sure that their visual representations are understandable to the layperson and are also in multiple languages, and they're also easy to find throughout the community. I think about in I don't know, 2018 maybe is when we had the Thomas Fire in Santa Barbara, and around downtown Santa Barbara, there were maps that kind of described what was going on and where the fire was. And that was kind of for the lay person to understand like how safe they are and what kind of threat is coming to them. I think those visual representations are how we all are going to start to like do the reading and start to come to understand what a master plan becomes, versus when it starts with just language that's a little bit over our heads, then it's easy to tune out. So mostly my main points are, how do we make sure that we don't exclude any members of our community? And that comes to the boundaries to understanding what the master plan is and who's going to make the final decision and what are the steps and how long is it going to take? Because I think some of us here are not really, we weren't aware until recently that this master plan has been a 20-year effort. Even just that is a compounding issue. So how do we clarify these things for our common resident or common citizen?
Thank you, Marcos, for that. I think that's really helpful. And I appreciate the comments from members of the public, and I appreciate the honesty. I know that Ash, you probably weren't the only one who was feeling a little bit eyes glazed over at times in that presentation. It got pretty wonky, and I really appreciate you bringing that up, because I think what it highlights for me is sort of what I think Director Deschler was trying to get at in her sort of, I guess, middle ground approach that she had brought up, about wanting to see if there's a way that we can have some of this information better digested for the board. It sounds like we're not going to be able to, I guess, fully hash this out today, but maybe what would be helpful to move forward would be if we directed staff to bring us back a proposal for some sort of a planning education, I don't know if it be a contract or program. What do directors think about that? Marcos, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think even that sounds a little bit vague to me, and I'm not trying to critique that. I think that maybe that is where we need to start, is something vague, possibly like a timeline of what a master plan, what's already occurred, what are some of the different avenues that we're going, and how the timeline has a couple different trajectories, and be realistic with the board and people who attend these meetings, like when something like this could happen. I think the concept of time is like the first kind of measurement before we get into maybe the spatial awareness.
So we want to know what our options are. Director Deschler?
Yeah, Marcos said it. I was thinking after you made your comments, and I'm thinking, that seems a little vague. And then Marcos said, that seems a little vague. Yeah, I think we need a little bit more meat to it. I think I would propose that we have staff research various options for contracting with someone who can provide the board with a brief overview, understandable layperson term overview of the Isla Vista Master Plan, what some of the options are, and just maybe a brief overview of Planning 101. So a couple of pages of that, a brief overview of the Isla Vista Master Plan, and then give us some suggestions and guidance for, the next 5 years or the next 3 years or something like that. So that's what I would propose.
I wrote a motion out of that, not the whole thing, but if you want me to read that back to you.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Motion to direct staff to provide options to contract with a consultant who can provide a brief overview of the IV master plan, the planning process, and guidance for the future.
All right. So I guess that's a motion. Is there a second to that motion?
Well, that's just what I wrote. I don't know if that's exactly what.
Are you making the motion, Director Deschler?
That sounds perfect to me.
Okay. there's a motion made. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second.
All right, seconded by Geis. Any discussion from board members?
Can you reread the beginning of the motion?
Yeah.
Key like verbs.
Yeah, motion to direct staff to provide options to contract with a consultant who can provide a brief overview of the Ivy Master Plan, the planning process, and guidance for the future. So I'll give you like a thing that says here are different contractor or different consultants. Some can do this, some can do that. So that might take some time to track them all down, but it's pretty clear to me though what I would need to do.
And maybe, I don't know if this is a question for Jonathan or a question for Kirsten, but the motion almost to me sounds like something along the lines of like a request for proposals or a notice of like funding availability type of thing.
I could see it going there. I don't know if that'd be the first thing we bring back maybe, but that would be like one of the.
That would be like the end result type.
Yeah. Yes, I'd see that.
That would come back after though. Like what we're talking about here is Jonathan goes off and comes back with, here are things you could do. Like there are companies that look like this that we could hire to give a presentation like this, or we could hire a more elaborate company like this to provide a full report that might look like this, and just provide these kind of like options, and then we would make a decision on whether we wanted to allocate funding, what we wanted to do. Not go into proposals yet because we haven't decided how to interface with that consultant yet until we get to that meeting, right? Like this not.
Yeah, no. I'm not gonna do an RFP. This is like a prelude to RFP. That's what Ross
Okay.
just transparency.
And you mentioned that you felt in like, the 20 seconds you thought about it for a second, that it might take a lot of time. Is that something that, I know you were already, as of our retreat, it was indicated you're currently operating at 125% capacity. When you say a lot of time, is this like a lot of time? Like, is this something that we should?
It's unknown because I don't know what this will take. We've never, I don't know the industry or the field, so it's gonna be something where we're not, I don't say we're blind going into it, but we don't have as much leads. So I mean, it's not gonna be impossible. We're gonna be able to do it. It's just not something I can do in a couple of weeks because I would need to first start seeing who the players are and getting some more information. But I think we have references and a network that can get us to all that. It's just, we're gonna have to track all the information down because we're almost starting from like scratch in terms of what we know.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the thought process then in my mind is that this still feels like, actually, worse. This feels like what we asked the county to give this presentation, and they gave us a boring presentation. Like that's the zeitgeist response here. It's like, okay, well, if we can get like a presentation that would go in more depth, let's hire an external consultant to give us a more detailed presentation on how all these things work. And I don't know. I guess I'm really feeling like what Rodney was saying, that like maybe working within the context of this plan and trying to update this plan isn't even the best approach for an agency like ours with this eclectic set of powers. Let's just work on solving. If we want to work on parking, we work on parking. If we want to work on, so I guess if we're allocating a lot of Jonathan's time towards this, in order to get to a point where we then might allocate a lot of money towards it, I think I'm still voting. I'll be voting no on this. But.
And I will say that I think that in the motion, I don't think the intention is to reopen the master plan. I think the intention is to educate us and the community on what's in it. Because we got our presentation, which is I thought was good, and I appreciate the county for giving it. But it kind of felt like sort of like the boilerplate almost. I didn't see a whole lot of analysis or a whole lot of description about what some of those terms meant. And I think the community came away with not the deepest of understandings of what exactly was. So I don't see this, and I would not vote for something that I think would tie us to the vision that was expressed in that past plan. But I think it's important that we can get an overview of what's in the plan. Does that make sense?
So I guess to like respin the thought process slightly without still having this idea of like let's try to delve into this planning thought process, and let's even bring in consultants. What if instead of having a consultant analyze the master plan and provide us the description of how all that worked, played out and worked? What if we were bringing in a consultant who could talk to us about the ways in which local communities can interface with counties on planning, and therefore explain a lot of the planning process, and with a strong angle towards how local communities become area planning commissions? Because like that's our power, is to try to figure out to get that area planning commission from the county and then to fund its operation. And now if we're going to try to get towards that direction, and we're going to spend time out allocating money towards planning, that seems to be the thing we should lean into. And that's still, I mean, it's yeah, I don't know, that's, any thoughts on that?
My first thought is reading the motion. I think that's what the motion is. It's guidance for the future, is that phrase there. And I also do want to recognize that the processes that we're talking about, a municipal advisory council, an area planning commission, those are two potential ways that we could participate in the planning process. There are certainly others, but even just within those two avenues, there's not a whole lot of precedent for how it would be done. Montecito has their area planning commission. They're one community. There's truly not that many municipal advisory councils, even just all around the state. So I understand that it can be a little easier if we say this is the set process, this is how it's going to work out. But I think we're in the investigatory phase right now, is how I view this.
Well, I think that's part of why I was kind of suggesting it. I mean, if it was a fixed process, I mean, I would just say like, well, let's just ask the county for the form. Let's just, let's just ask Ross to give us a description of the legal process for setting it up, and let's just follow it. But because there's so much open-endedness in how that interaction tends to work, that's where I could see it being valuable to bring in somebody who has experience talking about area planning commissions or something, to give us this like, well, here's how Isla Vista could try to become an area planning commission, and how it would interface with the county, and what planning means in the context of a small community like this. And then also potentially give us guidance on the extent to which it makes sense for us to be involved in a master plan process as an area planning commission. It's just not clear to me that we should almost jump into the perspective of like, let's look at the master plan and how to deal with, like, start taking point on planning issues. Now, I guess if you're saying that the motion didn't say that, maybe Jonathan could reread it. Actually, can you paste the motion into the chat so I can refer to it?
Yes, and if you have other language or an alternative language, that would be very helpful, I think, for all of us.
Yeah, and I'll just clarify. I'm not saying that, at least from my perspective, I don't feel like my perspective, that the master plan is the default. I think what I'm hearing from a lot of people is similar to what I feel. It's like, I don't know enough about the planning process to know how to move forward and to know what our options are. And I think we need to have a bare bones understanding of what the history of the master plan, what it was, and some of the takeaways, some things that are good, some that are not good. We need that advice, and we need it from a person who's a professional, and none of us are planning professionals. So that was my intent, is, get information on where we were and get information on what our options are for the future.
It's just still, when I read the motion, which it's not like you wrote the motion. When I read the motion originally, when I read the motion, it's going to have like about overview of the master plan, the planning process now, because now in the context now of having talked about this master plan, guidance for the future, I'm now thinking in terms of the future of our community with respect to this plan. And so that's why I'm kind of reacting the way that I am to this motion. I guess if we were to say like, contract with the consultants who can provide a brief overview of neighborhood planning processes, and then start from that point and move forward into and how local communities such as Isla Vista can or should be involved, potentially with a focus on the functions of area planning commissions. And that would be something I would be almost excited to vote for, because that would be something that might get us one step quickly closer towards activating that power.
Well, so I hear what you're saying. What I don't understand is, and maybe somebody here does, is that the county planning has invested time and energy in the Isla Vista master plan. They are not going to be proceeding with this. It's not on their work plan for 2 years, but the county is responsible for planning in Isla Vista. Why would they abandon this huge effort? And then wouldn't we then be taking over wouldn't we be taking over their function and maybe that's the point, that we would be taking over their function for doing planning in IV. I just can't see the county abandoning the Isla Vista master plan in total. I can't see it happening. So don't we want to build off of and make changes to the master plan? Or are you thinking, no, the master plan's out the window, we just are going to be creating our own path? I don't know.
And I'll even jump in here and say, from my perspective, we are not equipped whatsoever to answer that question. And the point of the motion as it stands for me is that it feels weird to talk about planning in Isla Vista without talking about this huge planning document that was developed over the course of 15 years and $3 million on behalf of the county in the public outreach process. That needs to be included, and we need to get an understanding of what that is and what all that work was and what it means.
I totally agree, totally. And it was mentioned at the meeting that we had with the county that some of the concepts in the master plan were very much ahead of the times. So I think reaching out to that company that put that together is really important for us and is part of this process.
I don't disagree with that, to the extent to which we are delving into and starting to take the function of planning. But it's not clear to me, first of all, right now, that we, quote, can do that. If we get to the point where we have the area planning commission, maybe that's the point that we do it. But maybe that's also the point at which the funding for doing all of that work would come from the county, and then our area planning commission would be providing all the decision making with respect to that. It doesn't seem at all appropriate to me with the power set that we have, what we've currently activated, the fact that we don't yet have the area planning commission, to decide, all right, let's start spending money on consultants to go through and explain to us the master plan, and then have us make decisions on what we want on planning yet. The first step should be, we could write the area planning commission if we want to do that, or we focus on what can area planning commissions do. Maybe area planning commissions don't really spend time working on master plans. If so, we certainly can't be spending all of this time, effort, and money on analyzing the master plan, because it's not even something we're allowed to do in some sense. So this just doesn't feel appropriate to me, either legally, financially, or like conceptually. But so I guess it is starting to feel more like you are wanting out of this what I thought you wanted out of it, and then all the people vote. It's fine. I mean, I vote no, and other people vote yes. It doesn't. You don't have to agree. So not personal.
All right. Well, thanks for that, Jay. And I guess without alternative language, we've got the motion. It's to direct staff to provide options to contract with a consultant who can provide a brief overview of the Isla Vista master plan, the planning process, and guidance for the future. Jonathan, can you call the roll?
Yes. Director Brandt?
Yes.
Freeman?
No.
Geis? Geis? Might have stepped away. Flaherty?
Yes.
Aguilar?
Yes.
Dashler?
Yes.
Bertrand?
Abstain.
Interesting.
All right, and Bob, I guess we'll leave the roll open for Bob. But I do see, I think we have the outcome, at least of the vote, with 4 yes, 1 abstention, 1 no. and then Bob can vote how he pleases once he is able to return and get back on Zoom. Phew, I know that was a long and very in the weeds discussion. I appreciate everyone, especially members of the public, for bearing with us as we get through that. And I'm looking forward to what is to come afterwards. Bob, I see you're back. I don't know if you were able to see, we have the roll open for you. There's a motion to direct staff to provide options to contract with a consultant who can provide a brief overview of the IV master plan, the planning process, and guidance for the future.
That's good. I vote yes.
Okay. So motion passes 5 to 1 with 1 abstention. And we will have that item coming back to us in the future. Next is item 4.4, racial justice and public safety work group update.
Great. So we haven't had an update on this in a couple meetings. I wanted to do it today, especially since we have all 3 of our interns, our public policy interns here today. And this is the first project that they're working on. So the update that we have is that we are working on a follow-up presentation to the discussions we had in the fall, which were, on the SNAP program, on Cahoots, on the use of force policies, and the police data project. So we're working on the board made a couple motions in terms of wanting to hear more information and have more presentations on some of these options and how to move forward. So we are doing the research and starting that process of getting those presentations lined up. So maybe this is also a chance for Leah and Sarah and Abigail, who are 3 interns, to introduce yourselves. They're going to be mainly working on this project, but possibly some others. But want to see if you all want to say hi to the board and maybe share briefly like what you've learned so far in doing research on this topic of unarmed response to community issues. I don't know if there you are.
Hi, my name is Leah. I am a 4th year student at UCSB studying political science and global studies, and I am one of the public policy interns for this year. So far, we've been going back and reviewing a lot of old meetings and watching them on YouTube and taking notes on previous suggestions and questions that the board have had about community alternatives to policing, and also researching other projects, and had a good time doing it.
You, Sarah, Abigail?
Hi, I'm Abigail. I'm a 3rd year student at UCSB, and I'm double majoring in political science and environmental studies. And I just want to kind of go off what Leah said. I've really enjoyed learning more about IVCSD and what you guys do, and it's something that I really want to take into my career in the future. Learning more about strategic planning and projects and ways to implement positive changes in your community on a smaller scale.
Hi, my name is Sarah. I'm a 2nd year political science and cultural anthropology major at UCSB. And yes, it's been a pleasure to watch old meetings and see everyone discuss and debate on this topic. And I'm really excited to work on implementing a recommendation plan and trying to see something come to Santa Barbara and Isla Vista.
Thank you all. So yeah, that's where we're at here. We're just working on follow-up, and I know we have some agenda items to get scheduled, and that's another thing we need to get working on to get some of these scheduled, like the meeting view with Chief Yao. So yeah, any other questions or suggestions from the board on other topics to add to this list?
Well, I just want to say a big thank you to the interns, and welcome to the team, Abigail, Sarah, and Leah. We're excited to have you, and we're excited to have you working on this important project. Do board members have questions about the work list? All right, I'm not seeing any hands from the board. The only thing that I would mention for staff and for members of the public is I think there was a really informative hearing today at the County Board of Supervisors in regards to KPMG, which is a consultant that went and did sort of a programmatic audit, which is super wonky sounding, but basically just analyze the way that law enforcement and public safety is done in the county. And they looked at all the different departments, and today they had their report on the sheriff's office. And I just think that there's some good information that potentially I think aligns with one of the projects that we work in partnership with the Foot Patrol and UCPD on, which is all this data on the calls for service and analyzing those. And I know that's something that for me is really high up on the list, especially after today, just seeing how in-depth potentially we could get with something like that. So if there's a prioritization, that's my vote for something that should be prioritized.
Right. It was a good hearing. I do also recommend people watch it.
Any comments or questions from the board? All right, any comments from members of the public? All right, seeing none, then I don't think we have any action on this item. Thanks for the update, and we'll look forward to hearing more in the future. The next item is district COVID-19 response.
Cool. I don't have much to add here since the work that we did was helping get our partners to our meeting today so that we can provide that information to the board and the public. So I don't have anything else to add in terms of what we've done for COVID-19 response in the last 2 weeks.
Thanks, Jonathan. Yeah, I think we sort of had our discussion about COVID kind of concurrently with the first item, and I don't know if there's anything else to add other than what's already been said, and hopefulness that our case numbers will continue to improve. Anything else from the board? All right, then last but not least, we'll go to item 4.6, Isla Vista Nightlife, Arts, and Cultural Programming. Planning.
Hi, so I can kick this one off. I think this will be a brief update tonight. To start out, I want to share a thought that I've had a lot since we've been working on this project, which is just kind of another thing to ground this initiative in, which is for so long that most of us have lived in Isla Vista, nightlife has been viewed as one of our biggest liabilities as a community, one of our biggest issue areas, one of our biggest challenges. And I think our hope with this process is that we flip the script and that we invest in nightlife and programming it and creating a high quality experience so that it's really something that's one of our greatest cultural assets. So that's why we're launching this community process. Since our last meeting, we've met with the Park District staff, Kimberly Kiefer and Luis Valerio. And we had a really good meeting that I'll pass on to Marcos and Catherine to talk about if they want to share anything from that. Additionally, we've done different meetings with stakeholders on their board, which have been very productive so far. One thing that I'll update you all on is that in consultation with the Park District, we are actually going to present to their district board on February 25th and postpone our community meeting to take place after that. We're gonna, I see Jay has a heart, glad to do it. We're going to work with them to present that first so we can go in united for this first community meeting. And this will also give us an opportunity to meet one-on-one with some other stakeholders too. So there's still going to be work taking place on time, just pushing back that community meeting about 2 weeks. I'll now hand it over to Catherine and Marcos for any updates they would like to share.
So I think Ethan covered most of it. The meeting with the Isla Vista Recreation and Park District really excited us. And I think they're going to be an incredible partnership moving forward in this process. So we were happy to present at their meeting on the 25th and then push back the meeting so that we can include as many of our potential partners as possible. I have really nothing other than that to include, but we're excited that we can get as many people as we can at that first initial meeting.
Yeah, I similarly don't have anything extra to add here. Ethan, Catherine nailed it, and I'm very excited that we will be working together with IVRPD.
And then one thing I'll add too is all of us have been in touch with the Daily Nexus on this as well, and hopefully we'll be able to speak with other outlets to get the word out on this. And one thing that we've really emphasized in our initial meetings is one of the first questions we get is, well, what do you want to see? And we kind of flip the script, which is all of us have our own individual ideas. I'm sure everyone on this board does. But to start out, we really want to hear from the community first about what they think will make a good process. And then soon to start talking about actual programmatic ideas. And just, I guess to close, our hope is that when we go through this process, we'll identify what's currently working, what our goals are for making changes, what some concrete steps are to make that happen. And then at the end of the day, who's going to do it and how can it be accomplished with both short-term and long-term goals. So more on that soon, but I'll turn it to Jonathan if you have any updates. And thank you, Jonathan, for all of your work on this.
Yeah, of course. No, I think no updates, just that, we did have to delay because IVRPD is working on a big grant that they think that might actually relate to this. And we're keeping on task though, and we've got a meeting next week and we'll keep on it. But Kimberly and I had a good conversation today to follow up, and they seem pretty on board and pretty excited about this, where it fits into their plans too. So I'm looking forward to it.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Ethan, Catherine, and Marcos, and Jonathan for your work on this. And we're looking forward to more updates to come. And very excited about IVRPD potentially getting a grant that relates to this as well. I saw a hand from Jay.
Yes. So I'm very happy to hear that Park District is being collaborated sufficiently in order to actually adjust timelines on meetings or to make certain that they were able to be extremely actively involved. I guess I will even push a little further and just say that given that recreation is a power specifically of the Park District as opposed to the Community Service District, I do continue to feel like they should be in the leadership position, that we are providing that catalyst of, hey, by the way, we're here to support you. We've got, we work on community facilities. We can help you with public safety. We want to like work on those aspects. But I want to make certain that I at least want to say that we should be trying to incept the model into the Park District such that they feel like they are the leaders as well on this meeting process going forward, as opposed to one stakeholder that we have brought into some process that we have or something. So, but I'm very happy to hear on how those discussions ended up going and what you ended up doing there. So great, thank you.
I do want to add under the banner just of cultural nightlife on all of these things. And it also, I think, relates to COVID-19 too, that I know I've been thinking a lot this week about preparing for Deltopia this year. Last year, we know that we had a non-existent Deltopia. And I think that in a lot of ways, our community benefited from the fact that because COVID-19 was so new, it really was fear that was keeping people home, keeping people inside. And as time has progressed, I don't think that we can rely upon that same levels of feeling from community members in order to make sure, or in order to see that things happen the same way this year. I think we may want to consider trying to, as we did with Halloween, work with event planners to get some sort of an event to happen. And I'm not quite sure what that looks like. I'm just throwing it out there for the board because I think now is the time for us to start thinking about this. I know it feels like it's a long way out, but I think it's approaching quicker than any of us can imagine. April's not that far away.
Yeah, I can share on that. I was gonna mention it in my report, but I'm attending a meeting next week that UCSB initiated to start talking about Deltopia events that will be happening and getting coordination on it. So that's great. I'm thankful for UCSB for getting that meeting going. And I did take a call from Lucidity, who did have an idea for what they would want to propose for Deltopia this year. And it was something like a drive-in event where you'd go in your car to the event, but there wouldn't be a space in Isla Vista. So that's a tricky situation where I'm not sure how that could, gel with what we're trying to do. But they did call me with that idea and proposal just a couple days ago. So it is definitely, we'll be at the meeting next week and see where everyone else is at too.
That's great. Thanks for that update, Jonathan. All right, I'll open public comment. Members of the public who'd like to speak on this, I see a hand from Rodney. Go ahead, Rodney.
Hi, I was just curious. Unfortunately, I wasn't at your first meeting. I'd be really interested in going to your next one though. But are you also talking about, because you're talking about nightlife, are you also talking about involving the businesses around the loop in this overall project?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you're asking that, because I appreciate when Director Freeman brings up the Park District as being a co-leader in this. But our two entities are just two entities in this whole process. The businesses are important, the educational institutions are important, arts and cultural organizations. We're helping initiate this and facilitate, but different segments of the community will be involved in co-owning this product.
Thanks for that comment, Rodney. And I see a hand from Mark. Go ahead, Mark.
Hi, everyone. I just love that this is happening. That's basically what I want to say for the most part. I think it's so important. I think nightlife art is really an essential part and a critical part of Isla Vista, and in a way that has oftentimes been unhealthy, but I think can be really healthy. I know that for, I think I always kind of reference the fact that UCSB brought, before she was as big as she is now, but like Billie Eilish to People's Park, and happened, 4 years ago now. And even kind of thinking in terms of going back to the planning process that was mentioned before, I don't know how many people know this, but the Icon Apartments, the Icon Apartments used to be a storage units that actually were soundproofed because local bands would practice from all throughout Santa Barbara. I'll post a link in the chat if anyone wants to look at a bottom line article about it. And that's Isla Vista used to be this hotbed for culture and for live music and for bands and for Deltopia too. And I think this is an opportunity to reimagine all of those in a better way. And I think the last thing I'll say and echo Rodney's point on local businesses is that I know, for an example, like when I worked at Ivy Drip, I was talking to my boss, Tom. He was telling me that when Bill's bus moved from one side of the street to the next side of the street, that he lost 30% of his revenue at night because no more people would come to get late night cookies at 2 a.m. when they were a little bit inebriated. And so just thinking about like how these little effects actually have huge effects on small businesses is really critical. And so I just encourage you all to think even on that granular of a level, that moving Bill's bus from parking by Woodstocks to then parking by the co-op has that big of effect on a business. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mark. Are there any other public comments? All right. I'll bring it back to the board then. I don't think there's any action, but we'll be looking forward to hearing more and participating in the process as it unfolds. All right, we'll go to reports next. Are there reports from members of the board? Director Deschler.
Is this the time that we say meetings that we have been in that people might be interested in?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. I have one that I was in today. I don't know why I got invited, but so I was in a meeting today with RPD, County Housing, Good Samaritan, and Food Not Bombs. And the focus of the meeting was on food distribution in the Isla Vista parks. And apparently the RPD is working with public health on creating a system of getting permits for the people who are serving food. And it has to do with COVID restrictions, but also has to do with sanitary restrictions that public health puts out. So yeah, that's it. I thought maybe people might be interested. It's nothing abnormal. This happens at city parks, but it's just a new process that RPD is implementing to make sure that people get the permits they need to give food out in the parks.
Thank you for sharing that, Kirsten. Any other reports from board members? Director Aguilar.
So I did get to have a nice meeting with Allison Gray from the Library Advisory Commission. And I'm not a sworn commissioner yet, but it's still coming. But she specifically wanted to pick my brain about Isla Vista desires or needs for their not soon coming, but post-COVID, soon coming book van project. And I believe they will be presenting about this topic at the next IVRPD board meeting, because clearly parks are going to be a target area for this Sprinter van to stop. But they're hoping that this will be 40 hours scheduled a week, with initially like one staff person and then 2 part-time positions created that would possibly be student age, college age employees. But I was really excited about this idea, and it goes along with some of my ambitions to make sure that Isla Vista is not forgotten when it comes to our public library service. As somebody who works at UCSB Library, we try our best to meet all the needs, but we're constantly over demand. And so it's great to have another library helping us out and doing some of that work in the field. So I'm really excited to join that commission, and hopefully when we are past COVID and we're allowed to gather safely, we'll be able to see this in action. We'll be able to have all the different other more exciting services that a library can provide beyond finishing your paper at midnight. So yeah, excited about that.
Thank you for that update, Marcos. And I'm glad to hear. I'm looking forward to when they'll get you sworn in the commission. Any other reports from board members? All right. With that, I don't think I have anything else to report. Any committee reports? All right. Report from District Council.
Thank you, President Brandt. Just a quick thank you to the board for having Williams step in on my behalf. William Ash, he is your assistant district counsel. As some of you know, I've been out. I actually broke my arm in a couple of places. I just had surgery on Friday. So when I was sitting in for the first half of the meeting on Saturday, I was not quite 12 hours post-surgery. So I am recovering. So thanks you to those who have expressed your concern. I appreciate it. But just want to illustrate that the benefit of having a firm as your district counsel is that knowledgeable people like William can step in if your designated point of contact like myself is unavailable. So just providing robust service and coverage for all of the decisions that the board is making. And we continue to watch for things coming out of the state legislature with respect to COVID. Obviously, what's going on in Congress, we're watching closely as well for COVID relief, including money for states to program for special districts, since not every state has a special district law that allows for the creation of these specialized local entities. So sometimes it gets overlooked, but CSDA is doing a good job of advocating on behalf of special districts statewide and pushing it through national partners to try and make sure that that need is not overlooked. And so we'll provide continuing updates on that as more information becomes available. So thanks again for having William. He said it was a good experience. He enjoyed the opportunity to engage with everyone a little bit more often than he has in the past. And we'll keep you updated on COVID-19 and funding as it becomes available at the state and national level. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross, and we wish you a speedy recovery. I'm glad to hear you're doing a little bit better now. The report from General Manager.
Great. So past 2 weeks review. Yeah, the retreat dominated the last 2 weeks, but I thought that was a great meeting. One of our best retreats, if not the best we've had. So thank you for giving us that time of the Saturday to get all that work done. You met the interns today. We've been onboarding them and training them, and now we know what some of their projects are going to be this fall. But we've also been spending the last 2 weeks getting them up to speed and hired at the organization. Compost Collective, we're hoping to relaunch in the next week or two if we have the shifts and availability to fill all the shifts to start the program. And if not, we're going to just have to look at other ways to be able to do that. But some good news is that we did visit the compost pile and shed site at the Estero cul-de-sac, and I suggest everybody goes and checks it out because it looks really great. And we got to go inside. It's locked right now, but it's going to be a great upgrade to the Compost Collective, and we just need to negotiate a lease agreement for use of it with IVRPD. And then some upcoming issues. We're working on distilling the retreat discussion. We're going to the community center CDBG meeting this Thursday from 9 to 11, which I encourage the board to be there. And that totally forgot to give my biggest announcement, which is that we've made great progress on that grant application, where we got this time, which we didn't get last time, a recommendation for the full grant amount by the committee. So that's not a guarantee yet. The committee on Thursday, which we can all attend in the audience, it still needs to vote, and then it goes to the Board of Supervisors to decide that. But that's a big move to get the staff recommendation of the full amount. So crossing our fingers we get that. Some meetings coming up this week. We've got the COVID-19 legislative call, so if you have any questions, you can let me and Spencer know. And we also have the board leadership meeting with Supervisor Hartman on Thursday. And then we're working on the marketing plan that the board took action on a couple meetings ago for Ivy Beautiful. We're following up on the marketing plan on that tomorrow, which it looks great so far, and we'll be bringing it back like the direction was. And yeah, that's about it.
Excellent. Thanks for that update, Jonathan. And I think I speak for everyone I say we're very excited to hear the positive direction that the CDBG grant is going in, and I'll be looking forward to joining. All right. Anything for the good of the order from directors? All right. Then with that, our next regular meeting is going to take place on February 23rd at 6 p.m. right here on Zoom. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
I will move to adjourn.
I second.
Made by Freeman, seconded by Deschler. Any board or public comments? All right, let's do roll call vote.
Hey, Brett?
Yes.
Freeman?
Yes.
Nice. Aguilar?
Yes.
I lost my place. Bertrand?
Yes.
And Flaherty?
Yes.
Did you call me and I forgot to answer?
Oh no, I actually missed you. So
Oh, good. Yes.
Did you call me and I didn't answer?
Yeah, so you didn't answer, Bob.
Yeah.
All right, glad we clarified that we're unanimous on adjournment. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you all soon.